Kaysville City Planning Commission meeting of November 14th. We'll call the meeting to order. First item on our agenda is a declaration of conflict of interest of any of the commissioners. Seeing none, we'll move on to next item on the agenda, a conditional use permit for animals at 1892 Lake Ridge Drive. I'll have you walk us through this one.
Okay, let's see. Let me get to the right slide.
City Planning Commission meeting of November 14th. We'll call the meeting to order.
We are live. That's good.
Checking in. Never be too sure.
Okay, so this is a conditional use permit for farm animals. For the benefit of those in the audience, I'm just going to give an explanation of the agenda tonight, the discussions that we'll have. Conditional use permits by Utah state law are considered permitted uses. And generally speaking, we have to approve conditional uses. They may just need to have conditions applied to that use that could help mitigate some impacts to the neighborhood. So that said, we have 5 conditional use permits on tonight's agenda, or is it 6? So we'll have some for business licenses, we'll have some for the boondocks, and the way land use law in Utah works again is we have these uses outlined in our zoning code, and we have permitted uses, which means basically you can just come in, get a building permit or a business license, it's permitted. Those conditional uses come to Planning Commission to see if there's any additional conditions that we could apply. However, the limitations that cities have on applying conditions are governed by what we have in our city ordinances. So there's some instances where we may apply a condition that's actually, I think, kind of rare with the conditions or the conditional use permits that come to Planning Commission. Usually the code, the zoning code that exists has provisions that regulate the use, and generally speaking, there's not a lot of conditions that we end up placing on those items. So that said, we'll walk through each of these. This one again is for farm animals. Kyle Orson is the applicant. They live at 1892 Lake Ridge Drive. Kyle was unable to be here this evening, but his wife Angie is here present if we have questions for the applicant at the end of the presentation. So their lot size is just over half an acre, and it's a single family dwelling. So we do allow farm animals in our residential zones given certain circumstances. So I'll go a little bit more into that in a few more slides. This is the aerial shot of the property that just shows where they're at. Their property's over a half acre. This is just a street view of the front of their home. We are recommending approval for this item, and here's the findings that we've outlined in the staff report. But essentially, as outlined in 1724, which is our farm animal chapter, having the use of animals on this property should not negatively impact neighbors. There are provisions that state, that they have to be at least 50 feet from any neighboring building that's primarily used for residential use, so that kind of protects inhabitants of a neighboring home. There are screening provisions. They have to control noise, dust, odor. This is all in our zoning code. So we are recommending approval. I did have a conversation with the applicant earlier today. Right now, their yard is not fully fenced. So that's part of the requirements in our zoning code, but I did just want to bring that up and have a condition of approval. Just note that they'll have to either, add those gates on the front of the home. I think it's the sides that are fenced off, but just not fully fenced. So before they are allowed to, would be allowed to bring those farm animals on site, they'll have to finish fencing the entire yard. So their intent is to have some horses on the property on occasion. The lot size would not allow for more than 2 horses. And they have a ranch in southern Utah, and sometimes as they're traveling back and forth, they have a need to bring a horse here in their, in their residential property. So the applicant did state that he's spoken to their neighbors and that I don't think there was any concerns coming from them. I don't believe we received any phone calls about this one. I know I haven't, Mindy hasn't, I don't think Ann has either. So with that, we'll go back to that recommendation and open up for questions for staff or for the applicant.
Thank you.
Melinda, is so it's primarily just for a couple of horses and really not mentioned any other farm animals?
That's my understanding, yeah.
And have they shown you how they intend to enclose them?
So there was, let me go back to this aerial slide. They did submit, sorry, I have to toggle back and forth between close and far. So they did submit a kind of a drawing that just showed an area back here that was outlined in red. And my assumption is that's where they would plan to have those, the horse or the horses.
And that would be the 50 feet away from any adjacent structures?
I did not measure that. I could, do you want to try and do that real quick and see how far away those houses are? So, I mean, given the shape of the lot, it would be difficult to have animals in an area that's 50 feet away. So let's see if we can get some quick measurements on that. I know, because our measuring tool is very wonky. Then we're all wonky. Yeah, I mean, looking at that, it probably would be a pretty small area.
Do you know what the easement is to the property line from that house?
Sorry, ask that again, Commissioner. What the
house on the side, the easement to the property line, is that like 30 feet or something?
You mean the setback or?
Yeah.
So the front setback, this is R120, right?
Yeah.
The front setback would have to be 30 feet. Sides have to be at least 8, and then the rear has to be 15. The wonkiness is.
I'm guessing just from looking at the layout from the houses on the adjacent lots, to be 50 feet away, it's going to probably be a pretty small area.
Now,
So that would make it 40
that
feet wide.
refers to structures. If they were only doing a temporary type of housing of the animals and they didn't want to have a structure, is that
That's a
a different?
good question.
House next door.
Let's just do an interactive map session here.
That's a good question, Melinda, that was just raised about. So for a structure for the animals, does that mean like a building? Would that not be like a corral?
Yeah, so let me go to the code. So the code says that they must be kept within an enclosed area or structure sufficient to contain the
the
animals.
requirement, though, only talks about structures.
The
That all such structures are located at least 50 feet from buildings on adjacent lots.
Predominantly used or occupied by humans, yeah. So let me go back to this, get that measuring tool up. Oh, goodness. So just like from the corner of the neighbor's house, let's see, where do we get to 50 feet? About right there. And then they may end up with a 10 by 10 area.
Yeah.
Let me try this from
That's
here.
what I was worried about, the house on the other side.
Yeah, actually, there may not be room on the property to allow for that.
But it does talk about it being a structure. And then elsewhere, it says that you either have a yard area or a structure, a pen or a structure, or whatever it says. So does that, an enclosed area or structure? The 50-foot requirement only talks about it being for structures.
So the 50 feet,
Oh, you're right. So if it's fenced, but there's not an enclosed structure, does that mean it's okay?
That's what I'm wondering.
They don't have to be
okay, I see
50
what you're
feet
saying.
from the fence, they just have to be 50 feet.
Yeah. The enclosed
from
area
the
could just be
enclosed
fenced.
So,
structure. It has
so
to be
you're,
50
okay,
feet
yeah,
from the
so,
house.
Ken, so you're saying, as we're reading the code here in live time,
If they fence
structures for the care have to be 50 feet away, not
But a structure isn't required.
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you.
It says an enclosed area or a structure. And then down here, it says that structures have to be 50 feet away. It doesn't say anything about the enclosed area.
Correct. I think you're right. This is why
So
we're
you could have
black
like an
wolves on our
open-
planning commission.
Open corral, open pen or something that would be less.
They went all the way to the fence line.
Yeah, I think I would interpret that the same way, Commissioner Summercorn, that if they were to build a structure, they would not be able to keep it 50 feet. However, the code allows them without a structure, and there is no provision for keeping them a certain distance away from the other homes.
Yeah, okay.
And does that contradict the number 2 with controlling odor, dust? If they can go all the way up to the fence line?
You know,
Not necessarily.
not necessarily. Yeah, I think that is something, especially if they're not going to be on the property full time, that would be easy for them to control the odor, dust, and noise. Generally,
Okay, I just looked up what the definition of the structure is in our code. It says anything constructed, use of which requires a fixed location on the ground, or which is attached to something of a fixed location, and which possesses an impervious material upon or above the ground. So if you had I'm guessing, what that sounds like to me is that if you had like a corral area that's just dirt, that's not going to meet the definition of a structure.
of a structure, right? Yeah. So that's. Yeah, I think you're right. If it was just a corral, structure has to be, I mean, generally speaking, something you would get probably a building permit for.
Yeah.
Not necessarily, right? Because you could have something under 200
not
square
necessarily.
feet, but
But you'd have to have an impervious surface at least.
this is an excellent discussion tonight.
Yeah.
It sure was. So let me go back to the PowerPoint. So that, said, I think as long as they don't plan to build a structure, they should be able to have the up to 2 horses on the property as long as they fence that off.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're here.
Well, and it looks like maybe right in that very corner, you might get to 50 feet, you know, and be able to put something there. If
Yeah,
you
I-
remove that shed or if, whatever that is.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that is possible, but it wouldn't be a very large structure.
Yeah.
No, no.
So I don't know if the applicant was, hoping to build. We can ask when he comes up.
You can, if you're okay, would you mind coming up to the podium? Were you planning on building a structure?
Here representing my husband. I am not the horse lover. No, and it's just one horse.
Okay.
So, and we mainly keep our horse down like in southern Utah at our ranch, possibly 2 at a friend's who has a place up in Morgan and occasionally at our place. So it's really just like a once in a while. It's not going to be a year-round thing. So
And you were,
no structure, no. We know we need to finish fencing off. We're planning on doing that anyways.
okay,
But no structure,
okay.
yeah.
If that's the case, I think they meet the requirement.
I think so too.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions or? Does anyone want to entertain a motion?
Mr. Chair, I would make a motion that we approve the conditional use permit for animals for the applicant Kyle Orison at 1892 Lake Ridge Drive, subject to the provisions that are noted here in the staff report. Which basically says it meets the requirements of the city code.
Do we need to state that condition for the fencing?
Or do we want to add the fencing condition?
Yeah. It is
It's in here.
Oh, okay.
the code.
Yeah, it's on,
Uh,
it's
in the
on there.
code.
But I just wanted to make sure that we had that on the
That's
record,
clear,
that they
yeah.
were aware they needed to fence off the property before they brought the horse in. So I think you can add it. It's either way. I don't think it needs to be there because the code states that, but if you want to, we can add that in as a condition of the motion of approval.
Yeah.
Finding
It'll be
C
clear.
mentions enclosed area,
It does,
so I think that covers the fence.
yep.
Okay, we have a motion.
I'll second that.
All right. Any discussion before we vote? Okay, we'll start the voting.
Aye.
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 Motion passes. All right, let's move on to our next conditional use permit. This is for a major B home occupation for Rockstar Concrete and Construction, located at 245 Christine Way for Christine Lewis. I'm not sure if I said that right.
The applicant is here, just so that you know that as well, Commissioners. So this is a conditional use permit for Rockstar Concrete and Construction. As you can see, it's at 245 Christine Way, and so fun, the applicant's name is Christine. I just thought I would note that. I think that's delightful. You get to live on a street where your name is there. She is the owner of Rockstar Concrete and general construction concrete business here in Kaysville. And as you can see, this is the home where they live at. The business will not be storing equipment there. The only equipment that they will have at the home is a truck. All the other equipment and supplies will be kept at a storage unit in Kaysville, as well as the excavator will be stored in Farmington. They have an enclosed trailer for recreational vehicles that will be stored behind their fence. And we'll see, they are all in compliance with the state, with DOPL for their construction and general contractor's license, along with the excavation and their demo license with asphalt and concrete. So the license has been verified with DOPL and also with the Department of Commerce. As you can see here with our staff recommendation, we've got that no more than 5% of the lot area, which would be approximately 675 feet, approximately, which that includes the home, accessory buildings, and the property that can be used for this business. Because of the nature of the business, it tends to overflow into, it possesses lots of equipment and such, and so that is part of our, of the city code. No exterior storage of materials or supply are allowed. Adequate off-street parking must be provided for any vehicles or trailers associated with this business, and only one vehicle, including a trailer that is greater than 22 feet in length, is allowed. As we go through home occupations, the purpose of the home occupation is to appear as if there is not a business being run there from the home, and that is why we have these items come for conditional use permits to Planning Commission. Staff is recommending approval of the conditional use permit for a major B home occupation located at 245 Christine Way for Christina Lewis, with any conditions that the commissioners feel free or necessary to put on there as per our code, and then for conditional use permits, which is 1730-8. So we will turn the time over to you guys to discuss this, and like I said, the applicant is here for any questions that you might have. We have received 2 phone calls as staff with neighbors that have expressed concern for the amount of equipment and use of street parking. And so that was part of the reason why that information was included in our findings for this conditional use permit. There you go.
So, Mindy, when you say there has been concern expressed about that, is that something that's currently occurring? That there's equipment there now?
So this item came to us as, it started off as a code enforcement issue.
Oh, okay.
And so we've been working with the homeowners to get several of the code enforcement items taken care of. This just happened to be part of it, the items, equipment and tractor, the excavator and items were on the property. And so we've been working with the applicant to get that cleaned up so that it could make it compliant for a conditional use permit.
And is the property compliant now?
As of when I went and took a picture the other day, items are back behind the fence. Equipment has been removed from the property. And they've been very compliant in working with us as staff to get that.
Okay.
Yeah, so there are some ongoing or current concerns with the code enforcement. We always try as a city to get voluntary compliance and work with property owners. And so this is part of that compliance process, is getting them the business license. And there are some other things. The sidewalk needs to be replaced. We'll probably, I'll discuss a little bit more with the applicant, timing of that. That's something that can wait until the spring. So they have made a lot of progress with some of the code enforcement issues that were brought to our attention in September. I had a great conversation with Christine and Scott in October, and they have been absolutely willing to come into compliance. They want to be good business owners, good neighbors, and I've appreciated that as we've started to work through this. So, these types of things are difficult and sometimes very time consuming, and depending on personal circumstances, we do just try and get to voluntary compliance. We have spoken with the city attorney about this and wanted to make sure that, that those code enforcement issues that are separate from the conditional use permit, that we don't really bring those into the dialogue and discussion, because we have a mechanism through our code to address those. Right, and as Ms. Edstrom stated, as allowed through 1726, operating a business like this shouldn't have really, it should be a negligible impact on the neighborhood. And so they're working to, I know that when I spoke with them last, they had rented a storage unit and we're working to clean out the property and take, business items over there. So there are several things that I feel like they've made some great progress with, and some that, like I said, will probably wait for the broken sidewalk until after winter. I do want to confirm with our Public Works Department whether or not they're okay with that, but given other sidewalk items that are, issues we've dealt with other property owners, it does take quite a bit of time. You got to find a contractor, or you got to get a permit, and so given the time of year that we're going into, I think waiting until the spring should be okay. So, we feel like it's okay to have the conditional use permit approved by the Planning Commission, and then, of course, if there are problems going into the future with either spillover from the business, whether it's parking or materials or having equipment stored that should not be there, we would deal through that through our regular process of code enforcement, and not just specific to this business, but any business that needs a conditional use permit. We always have the option to revoke a conditional use permit, and then if that were to be the case, then we would revoke a business license as well, because they have to have that conditional use to have that business license. So I don't anticipate that happening. I think, like I said, they've been great working with us so far, and I think that relationship will continue, and we'll just make progress towards getting all of these concerns addressed. And then, and as I said, part of that compliance process is getting them the business license so that they can operate the business legally out of the property.
Okay.
I don't have any questions, but does the applicant have anything you want to add to anything that's been said, or any kind of?
Come on, yeah.
Why don't you? Thank you.
I think some of the things that were on our property that can be assumed were for our business, we're installing an underground pool and doing a bunch of renovations in the backyard of our house, so that stuff was also just intermingled. But we have 3 storage units that we have moved everything to, so it should be good. That's all.
Thank you. Now, we do have the ability to take public comment. As my understanding, there might be some people here that wanted to comment on this issue. Is there anyone who would like to address the commission? Okay, seeing none. Discussion, questions?
It sounds like the issues are being resolved through the enforcement process, and of course, in order to get them a business license and make them compliant, one of the things they have to do is get the conditional use permit, and it sounds like they're aware of things they need to do for that, and they're working on that to get that done. And if they don't comply, then staff will pull the permit and then the business license. So I think.
Agreed. I mean, I think all the items mentioned here and seem to fit well, and the mechanics of the law is there to take care of it. I don't see any issues.
Mm-hmm.
We do have a number of these throughout the city. I mean, a lot. And, right, most everything, or the most common item the Planning Commission hears are these conditional use permits. And so hopefully, as with the other ones that we have, we won't receive any complaints. We don't get complaints from those properties that have a conditional use permit. So I think they're a little bit more aware of what standards and regulations are.
Okay.
Good. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the conditional use permit located at 245 Christine Way for Rockstar Concrete and Construction for Christine Aldias. Alice, sorry, I'm saying that wrong. With the conditions that the Planning Commission sets forward in the findings, which are being consistent with the Kaysville City Code 1726-4, Major Home Occupation Regulations. Also, staying compliant, being aware of all of those, everything in the code that we've already discussed and that's been worked through. And then with city zoning compliance, and that it will not have any adverse effect on the surrounding property or neighborhood based on the same city code.
I'll second.
All right. We'll start the voting with Commissioner Lott.
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Next item on the agenda, conditional use permit for a major B home occupation for Crunch Time Construction located at 1398 North Mountain Road for Jonathan Pedden.
Well, I'll be darned, we were just talking about conditional use permits for construction businesses, and here we are with another one. So, we're getting really good at doing these. I'm getting really good at doing these. Okay, so, this is for Jonathan Pedden. Is he here? Hello back there. Okay, glad to have you here. He's the owner of Crunch Time Construction, also a new business here in Kaysville. The only equipment that he'll have in his home, his location, is his truck and his 16-foot trailer. As you can see here, he's got a large piece of property where everything can be stored. All equipment and supplies for the business will be sent to the construction site, and there's no other employees or customers at the home, and he is a general contractor with Doppel, and he's been verified with them. The home does not look like this anymore, right? It's been painted, and it's got a little facelift, so if you're looking for that home, you won't notice it, but it's great. So staff is recommending approval for this conditional use permit at 1398 North Mountain Road for Jonathan Pedden and Crunch Time Construction with any conditions Planning Commission feel are necessary. As you can see, there's the findings, which are similar to the last findings that we had for the previous applicant. And he is here for questions, and turn the time over to you guys.
It seemed really straightforward to me. I don't know. Do you have anything you want to add, or is it? We need them.
I feel like we just went through all of this in great
Yeah.
detail.
Yeah,
And
that's
so
right.
it's nice to piggyback on another.
Yeah, everything seems to be in order here, and I don't have any questions or.
Whose turn is it to make a motion?
I'll move to approve the conditional use permit for the property at 1398 North Mountain Road, Crunch Time Construction, based on the findings of staff.
Okay, we have a motion.
I'll second that.
All right, we'll start the voting with Commissioner Summercorn.
Aye.
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 Motion approved. All right. Conditional use permit for the sale of beer at the Boondocks Full Service Restaurant located at 525 South Deseret Drive. I imagine this is the reason many of you are here. We appreciate your interest and participation. Staff, why don't you take us through it and tell us what we are talking about, and also what we're not able to, what we're not deciding either.
Sure.
Kind of clarify all the different hoops.
Yeah, so the next two items are for the same property. They are similar. In fact, it was after Ann was done, I was like, I could probably just do one staff report for the same. It's almost a, copy and paste
Yeah.
with the exception. So the property is zoned general commercial, and Boondocks has been in Kaysville, I believe, since 2013. General commercial does allow, as a conditional use, the sale of on-premise beer consumption as well as liquor. They are two separate items in our conditional use code, and so they needed to come with two applications. They're, right, two separate uses, and our code has them separated out. So again, this item, the next item, this slide presentation is also essentially a copy and paste. But just to kind of show the surrounding area, right, I think we're all familiar with this is over on Deseret Drive. So 1719-4, which is our general commercial zone, and section 4 outlines all those conditional uses. So number 6 is the one that details that the sale of beer for consumption on premise for a full-service restaurant, et cetera, is allowed as a conditional use. The state of Utah regulates all of the alcoholic beverage sales and consumption, they regulate all of it. There are some times where the city has a little bit more say in others, but we don't have any regulations in our zoning code particular to regulating the on-premise consumption other than just it's a conditional use. So state law does have provisions about proximity to community places like a church, a school. That does not fit this area, as in the state would not deny a license because of proximity issues or concerns. So the applicant is here this evening, and they did submit a site plan, which just shows their current layout. I'll switch here in a minute. They had some slides that they wanted to just show the commission. Recently, they have received, at their Draper location, a liquor license, beer license as well, and so again, to those in the audience who may have concerns about this, the commission's role this evening isn't to decide whether or not we approve or deny the conditional use permit. It's whether or not we apply any additional conditions other than what the code outlines. We are limited in what conditions we could place on that. They have to be codified. And given those that we have in our code, staff is not recommending any additional conditions. Now, the Planning Commission is free to add those, and I can pull up 1730-8 again if you'd like to look through those to see if there's anything that you feel like may be germane. We did receive several comments. I did forward, I think, 4 emails to the Planning Commission today from residents that live over there and expressed opposition to the conditional use permit. My response to them did include the section of state code that just says that the city shall approve, or a municipality shall approve, a conditional use permit. The conditions are meant to mitigate any negative impacts that may exist, but we are not required to fully, what's the word that the state code says? There has to be some type of impacts, right? Like we cannot regulate away all impacts, but those that are reasonable to regulate, the state code allows us to do that. So let me go from here, just let me go through. So we are recommending approval for the beer permit as well as the liquor license, and we do have findings which essentially just says that this will be regulated through state code, the Division of Alcoholic Beverage Services. So let me just now kind of hop out of this and actually I'm going to rethink this for a second. So how about we stay with our presentation, and when the applicant comes up, I can pull up the slides that you had, and you can kind of talk through what you wanted to show the commission and those here this evening or watching at home. Let me go back to this. Yeah, so this is one of the things that's kind of hard, because a lot of times residents come and feel like they can influence an outcome, but this is what state code classifies as an administrative item. And that means really like once all of the regulatory items in our code are met, we need to approve that. I have not successfully had a conditional use permit denied in my time. They're just really hard to come forward with without, you know, you can't remove all the impacts, you're just supposed to mitigate some of them. And it's very hard to successfully do that, given how state law works in court cases. So that said, let me just go through real quick the other part of or agenda item number 7. So same address, right? We're looking at boondocks. This is paragraph 7 out of our permitted uses, which just talks about the sale of liquor for consumption on premises. And the site plan is the same, the findings are the same, the recommendation is the same. So that said, I'll open up for questions to the commission, and then, as I said, the applicant's here this evening as well.
Do we have any questions before we hear from the applicant, or do we want to just move?
Maybe just to echo what Melinda was just talking about, conditional uses in the state code and by court cases that have been decided are pretty much considered to be permitted uses. It's not like we have we have the discretion to say, yeah, we like it, no, we don't like it. It's pretty much that it's allowed. And the only way we could turn it down is if there's some detrimental impact to the community or to the neighborhood or the area that cannot be mitigated. And mitigated doesn't mean eliminating it, it means just trying to lessen the impact. So there's not a lot of discretion here. Once it's in the code, and it is in our code for general commercial uses, it's pretty much considered to be a permitted use, and about the most we can do is maybe add some conditions if we identify some specific impacts.
Yeah, and let me just pull up that section of code that, go back to 1730. So as I mentioned, right, any standards or conditions that we place have to be codified. We did have 2 years ago, Planning Commission overreach, and they applied illegal conditions, and we made efforts to help the Planning Commission understand that what they were doing was not legal. They did it anyway. The applicant appealed. The administrative law judge overturned the illegal conditions. So that was, an interesting process, but as Commissioner Summercorn said, we really don't have a lot of discretion here with what we can and can do. However, I think there's 12 conditions here, so, there already is adequate access for public safety and services and water volume. That's already been, right? This isn't going to change that. There's safe circulation for vehicles and pedestrians, as has been established since they've been there for 11 years. Adequate access. They have their drive approaches. So looking at these, there really wasn't anything that as staff we felt like would be appropriate to place additional conditions on this particular use.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's hard to make it clear. You look at the agenda and it says, permit for the sale of beer, and this is, we're talking about a permit that says it's a use that could happen at this site. It's not a liquor license. That's a state, thing that we don't have, the control over and stuff. So I just want to make it clear enough, hopefully, that we understand, like, we don't have the ability, we're not, they can't just start serving liquor because the planning commission, approved a conditional use. That's a different process.
Yeah, and to give a little bit more explanation, so land use is a very complicated topic. You have federal laws, you have case law, you have state code, city code. Sometimes even you have policies that guide what you can and can't do. So back in the day, and I don't know when, but when the city council approved our general commercial, also our central commercial and light industrial zones, it included the provision of having as a conditional use the sale of on-premise consumption for beer and alcohol. So that was, again, I don't know when, but that was a legislative act. So the city council would have had ability to say, we don't want to allow this, or we do. But back when this zoning code was put in place, they voted to allow that as a conditional use. And so the time for discretion really was back then, and let's just say it was 10 years ago. That's when they could have said, you know what, we don't want to do this. We don't want to have it in allowed use. Although, I think I'd be very interested to find a community out there that didn't have on-premise beer or liquor as an allowed use in a commercial zone. It's a very common thing, right? We have restaurants. I know, let's see, Wingers sold on-premise, right? They had on-premise beer consumption. Nico Sushi does. So the administrative part, is we just have to approve the conditional use permit and apply any conditions. Everything else will happen through the regulatory process with the state, through DABS. Mindy and I talked earlier tonight, and they have, we only have one business license it's combined for beer and liquor, so they wouldn't need to have separate licenses, although they have to have separate conditional use permits. So after the conditional use permit is approved, and if there's any additional conditions when they come in and apply for that business license, we'll ensure that those conditions are met. And then really it's the state comes in, and I know Katie, I know you work for Ogden City. I helped with a project on Grant Street with Utah Brewing, and the state literally came out. There's a church on the corner of Grant and 24th Street, and the state literally comes out. They walk that, they measure it, make sure that it's meets their proximity requirements of distance away. And so I know the state does do a thorough job with that. And again, in this particular location, I don't see any proximity issues, but the state would check for that because that's their code and not ours.
Well, let's hear from the applicant if you have anything you want to share or add in the discussion. Or
Hello, my name is Damon Day. I'm one of the founders of Boondocks. It was actually in 2008 that I came before the Planning and Zoning and City Council, and we introduced Boondocks to Kaysville. We opened in 2009. And so we've been in this business for about 35 years. We started as a construction company. I was just going to provide a little bit of context to the application. I don't know if that's helpful with respect to the people who came to hear and have an interest. I thought it might be a little bit helpful. I'll just take a couple of minutes.
Great.
We started as a construction company building things like go-kart tracks and bumper boat ponds and things across the country. And in 1993, we built our first facility for ourselves. And at that time, they were outdoor attractions and indoor attractions, things like arcade games. We had some kind of food offering inside. Outside, we had the miniature golf go-karts and bumper boats. And that type of facility in the industry is known as a family entertainment center. And so when those things have developed over time and certain types of attractions have become traditionally offered in that type of setting, in 2008 when I came here and we introduced Boondocks, we had bowling included in that mix. And that was the first time that as a company that we had included bowling. And we were recognized by Brunswick Bowling, the oldest bowling manufacturer in the country, as being the first family entertainment center in the United States to incorporate bowling into their mix, so in that traditional setting. So this facility is unique for that reason, that it was the first to do it, and then it exploded. Bowling was added to these types of entertainment venues all over the place, but just to clarify, it was one that had outdoor and indoor attractions. We added bowling. And over time, there are things that develop in the industry that affect the offering. Offering bowling impacted what kind of food we needed to provide. So we had to up our game. We went from a snack bar to offering a better food offering, and things have continued to develop. So you've seen competition come into the valley of, we're selling against people like Fat Cats that have just indoor attractions, or Top Golf, who has just outdoor attractions, but have those types of things that offer, and so we're competing with them. We actually even compete a little bit against Lagoon, even though the setting is different, but groups, when they're wanting to go out and entertain, make a decision. Do we want to go to Lagoon in an amusement park and take our group, which is a great, fun thing, but amusement parks focus on the individual thrill of the ride, where different types of businesses are more socially centered. So ours is more of a social interaction. The types of things we do, small groups, families, those kind of things, engage in those activities. And so the family entertainment business has been my life's work. I've been doing this for about 35 years. We have 2 locations here in Utah and 2 locations in the Denver, Colorado area. And since in the last 20, we really haven't done much of any construction for others, just for our own, and we've focused on the operation of these family entertainment centers. And things have continued to develop. We've recognized that consumers want high fidelity, they want a higher quality experience. We need to provide a better food product, and so we're investing in our facilities as we go. And so after about 15 years of operation, we recognize that in order to keep the business thriving and give people reasons to want to come back, we have to do our very best both in operating and investing and maintaining our facilities. So we are currently starting a renovation project here at the Kaysville location. We're going to spend a little more than $6 million in bringing up the aesthetics. We'll add some attractions, things like an XD dark ride theater, so it's a motion theater experience, similar to one we have here, but just a better experience. We will go back into the bowling center that we built 15 years ago, upgrade the scoring, the lighting, the sound, to make for a better and improved experience. So when people come, they have a better reason to come back. So we're going to elevate the food offering as well. And as part of that, that is what kind of prompts us coming in. It is not our desire to peddle alcohol. That's not what we're trying to do. But what we are trying to do, the success of the businesses in this type of industry are the result of a synergistic offering. It's not just one thing that we offer and sell. It's the mix of things that we do that provide a variety that makes it a comfortable environment for people to come. So I recognize there are residents here that probably have some concerns about what's this going to do to the character of the business. Quite honestly, in 2012, when we went in, to our Colorado facility, and we added bowling, and at the same time added beer and wine, I had the same questions. What is it going to do to the character of the business? What is the impact going to be? What does it do for safety concerns and those types of things? And as we went and toured other facilities who had been doing this for years, those concerns started to be addressed. And I can say after 12 years of doing this at the Colorado facilities, after recently renovating the Draper project and incorporating that, I can honestly say that my concerns have been allayed, that it does not threaten the integrity or character of the business. It's a safe family offering in much the same way that an Applebee's or a Red Robin also provides that, but it does it in a way that is consistent with the character and the appeal of the business. And so I was hoping to have somebody here that's been to the Draper facility both before and after our renovations to speak to that, but I can say that it's done in a very conscientious and safe way, And it's been done where we really haven't ever had any problems with some of the things that initially I thought would be concerns. What about intoxicated people? Do we have those concerns? The thing about the nature of our business is it's all active. None of the things that we do, people come in and sit and lounge. They go to pay to play and do things. We want people to be active. We want to turn it around, have a positive experience, leave and come back later to entertain. Nobody goes there and just sits around and waits for things, so that it's an active environment. So that curbs some of the concerns that initially that I wondered about is, you know, what impact is this going to have on us operationally? So anyway, I just wanted to give a little bit of context of why we're doing this. We're doing this as we elevate the product and the offering that we have. Probably 90% of the people that visit the Boondocks here in Kaysville come from outside of Kaysville. They come from other neighboring areas to enjoy this facility. We've appreciated being here. We value our relationship and partnership with the community. We try to operate these facilities in a very best way because we absolutely depend on our people having the kind of experience that will encourage them to come back another time. And so we operate and maintain and develop these facilities with that very much in mind. So this is Brandon Strebel. He's our Director of Food and Beverage Operations for our company. I think he'd be happy to address specifically anything that's related to the application, or would be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know, do we have any thoughts or questions?
How big is your restaurant? Or is it in yet, or are you going to be putting it in?
It is in currently. We are renovating and updating it.
Uh-huh.
I don't know the actual square footage, but it's 140 seats.
About 140 seats.
Yeah.
Okay.
So should I just kind of go through these slides real quick, and then if you want me to pull up the floor plan again, I can. They're just not on the same presentation.
These particular pictures are from our Draper facility. So the renovations will be very similar to what we've done in Draper. And so the Kaysville facility will look very much like this. So it's an aesthetic upgrade, fits, finishes, not a whole lot of remodeling, moving walls or those kinds of things, but mostly improvements. We're adding both on the interior, the dark ride that I mentioned. On the exterior, there will be an obstacle course. It's called a ropes course. So it's an elevated obstacle course. You strap in and have the opportunity. It's about a 2-story thing. When you look at it from the bottom, you think, oh, that's not a very big deal. Once you get up there, it feels like it. So it's a good kind of team building or individual experience to have, you know, a challenge climbing around on. You've probably seen those at other locations. But the other attractions will remain the same, but it'll just be a kind of an improved and enhanced look to go along with our enhanced entertainment and food offerings.
Okay.
Yeah, we've been working with Boondocks on that climbing course probably for even over a year now, and I know that Dan started working on that, and they wanted to avoid a conditional use permit, so they kept it under 35 feet, and it's in the plan review process right now.
Okay. I don't think we have any questions for you right now. Thank you. We have decided that we will open up for a public comment period here. Hopefully we've answered a lot of questions and you understand what we will be voting on here, but we'd like to hear from anyone who has decided they want to talk. Thank you.
Will you just make sure you state your name for the record as well?
Russell Condi. I live at 522 Joshua Drive, Kaysville. Just so I understand, this is a full-service restaurant license, and they'll be required to purchase 70% food to 30% alcohol. They cannot just consume alcohol. They have to purchase food. Is that correct? That's a full-service restaurant license.
So we don't regulate that, the state does.
That's the state, right? 70% food, So if a person came in, I can't just buy a beer, I have to purchase food, correct?
In the restaurants, yes.
What was that?
In the restaurant, yes.
Clarify what you're saying, please.
So outside of the restaurant, we have a beer recreational license.
So you're applying for a beer recreation license in addition to the restaurant?
Correct.
So a person could just purchase, so that's like a bar, you could purchase alcohol without food.
So inside the restaurant, you have to order food
That's the
to
restaurant.
get the liquor and
That's the full-service
Full
restaurant
service.
license.
outside of the restaurant, you can just get 5% or less.
So that's considered, that's like a bar, and that's what you're applying for tonight?
We're applying for both.
Okay. Is that zoned for a bar?
It's zoned for alcohol
Yeah.
and beer.
But my question is it zoned for a bar?
It's,
Because
well,
that's what they're asking for.
all our code says is alcohol or beer, whether it's permitted or not. Doesn't call it a bar, doesn't call it anything else.
Can you put conditions on time constraints?
No. No, we can't. So the state has different licenses than we do. We have a distinction between on-premise beer and on-premise alcohol. My understanding is that the state, they'll need to have 3 different licenses for the 2 for the beer, liquor, and then for the banquet. Okay.
Now, is the
so-
banquet just for adults? Is it going to be partitioned off so juveniles cannot enter?
It's a private room. When we have events come in, they can purchase or request a private bartender, and it's only in that sectioned off.
Okay, but during business hours, this area where they can just purchase alcohol, is it for adults only?
So our banquets are sanctioned off in private rooms. Our liquor license in the restaurant is partitioned off with pony walls. It's a 21 and older section. They can get beverages throughout the entire restaurant, just like a normal Applebee's, Chili's type of thing.
But they have to buy 70% food
Correct.
in the restaurant. But this other facility outside the restaurant, you're saying that that one doesn't require food.
Correct.
Can minors enter that room?
So it's within the facility. So if you look on this, up in that top right corner, by to the left, a little bit further, right there.
We've got a laser pointer if you want.
Perfect. So yes, right here, that will be our satellite bar is what we call it, within inside the facility. Minors are not allowed to go to the bar, but people are 21 and older can go up to the bar and order a beer.
I feel uncomfortable with that. There's got to be a condition where it's adults only.
So that part is regulated by the state?
I realize you keep passing the buck to the state.
No, I'm
But-
telling you what the
but-
regulations say, and all we can do is what the
Don't raise your
regulations
voice.
say.
Don't raise your voice, okay? I'm just saying that that's irresponsible if a minor child can get in close proximity to a bar. A child cannot walk into a regular bar now. They can't even walk through the door. And they're going to be able to walk in there?
It's the same thing as Fat Cats in Syracuse.
That's irresponsible. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
My name is Jennifer Borup. I live in Kaysville, over the fence from Boondocks. I was here when the original permit was being petitioned for. Our neighborhood went through a process with, and I don't know if you were there in the meetings that we had with the neighborhoods, but we had council members there and the representatives from Boondocks to kind of help us through the process because there was quite a bit of resistance. In those meetings, and the reason I'm bringing this up tonight is I really wanted it on the record that there were 2 agreements that I know of, unless somebody else remembers something else, that they were to gate their parking lot after hours, close the parking lot after all of the vehicles were ushered out, and that their lighting on this side of the building was turned off after like 1 a.m. when they close. The lighting is quite bright, shines right in our bedroom windows. That was one of the agreements, as well as the gates. As time went on, the lighting stayed on. The gates deteriorated, and they were not replaced. And ever since then, the neighborhood, every Friday night, Saturday night, especially in the summer, there is parties after hours. Employees go home, the patrons stay. Loud music, donuts in the parking lot, races up and down Deseret Drive. We've called the police, they're busy, or they're not responding, and usually we get the county sheriff, because Kaysville does not have adequate coverage for the weekend, I guess. I don't know. But nobody comes. We recently have looked into, with the city manager, the past meetings to find out if anything was ever documented about these gates. Their position is they shouldn't have to gate the property. And if that's what they want to do, I guess they're entitled to do what they want to do. But as a neighborhood, we're saying it's a huge problem with us. We wish that you would pay attention to it. I realize we may not have a say in the alcohol deal. I think it's wrong. I don't think you can compare this type of facility with an Applebee's restaurant. People are driving vehicles outside. They're driving boats, they're driving go-karts. That's not Applebee's restaurant. There's a big difference. So I have a problem with it. I kind of feel like our hands are tied. But I would like to say to Boondocks, you have not kept your word on the things that were most important to our neighborhood. And I wish they would. They have not been a good neighbor at all. They refuse to put the gates back up, and we have to live with the consequences. So that's what I would like to express tonight. Thank you.
Ma'am,
Yes.
were you able to research the minutes and see if there was anything documented in any of the minutes
Yes,
or anything
we
about
were,
that?
but there was a big question, just as there was misinformation tonight, that she said it was built in 2013. The construction started in 2008, so our meetings with them were before the opening, November 2009. So they researched. I think that it never got to the public meeting record.
Oh, I
because
see.
we met in private. We actually met at the building
I
with
see.
them, and we met in a neighborhood home.
Yeah.
Their stand when the city manager contacted them recently about the problem was churches were not required to gate their properties. But this is a different patron that patronizes here. It's a party patron. It's totally different than a church activity. Church activities break up about 9 o'clock at night. These break up at 1 o'clock. Employees go home, and they're left to party in the parking lot. It's exhausting. Absolutely exhausting. And we have put up with it for a while now. The gates worked. We'd like them back. I don't think that's too much to ask to do. So, thank you.
My apologies for misstating the year that Boondocks came in, but thanks to Boondocks for correcting that. To the best of our knowledge, we have researched this, and the discussions never happened in a public meeting. the timing
Yeah.
of the conditional use permit that was issued shows that notes from this meeting that was not held in a public forum took place after that conditional use permit was issued. So there is no recourse for the city, and also, to the best of my knowledge, it wouldn't have been a legal condition for us to impose anyway, because we don't have in that list of 12 standards adding a gate. So, you know, it's unfortunate that things transpired that way, but to the best of, and records are old and not well kept. We do a much better job now of keeping records and staff reports. So looking through a paper file and then the minutes, the conditional use permit for Boondocks was issued prior to that discussion with the neighbors. So whatever happened really was not, I mean, the city may have been present, but it was not an agreement between the city and Boondocks. It was more of an agreement between the residents, the neighbors, and Boondocks. And so
That's what I
we
wondered.
cannot force Boondocks to replace gates or put gates back up.
It was not part of the
Correct.
conditions or any of the agreements that were made with the city.
Correct.
I just wanted it on the record while they're here, so that they heard it. Because we're not.
Is there anyone else who would like to?
Can I just ask a question? Is alcohol allowed to be carried throughout the whole building?
With inside, but we do not allow outside video cards and reach at all.
So it has to stay in the
Correct.
And it won't be served when you have the graduation parties, correct?
No, if it's under 21 and older,
It's a whole place.
My name is Tyler Thorne, and I say this is probably a little bit unique, and I don't know how close Boondocks is in Draper to residential houses. Right here, they're across the fence, and they're pretty close to, and this is kind of a family-friendly business. You've got the boats, the cars, the miniature golf, the arcade games, et cetera. And I don't know that you're really going to attract the crowd that you want with the alcohol. I mean, most people are going in there. If it's family-friendly, you kind of keep it unique. And you were unique when you brought bowling in the first place. If you stoop to the level of the other ones and bring in alcohol, I don't know that that's going to set you apart anymore. And you will probably offend some of the people here who may have to deal with the repercussions. And it's not something I want my kids to work at if they have to, worry about alcohol and have that in the area. So you'd be more unique by keeping it out and still cater to the family-friendly activities. So just something to consider.
Thank you, sir.
I just would like to, on the record, for our wonderful county, who has voted on Tuesday to put a homeless code blue within blocks. Are you aware of that you'll be having a homeless center really close to your place? Yeah, so we just have the alcohol just in time for the homeless. Just thought we would.
Well, but the homeless folks would have to go inside Boondocks to be able to acquire it, right?
They can't, nobody can make people go anywhere or stay anywhere in this country,
Those
maybe.
are two separate issues.
Yeah, anyway, they're going to be very close in proximity. And I thought that might be wanting to be on the record that will be happening. And maybe Boondocks would like to know that it is slated for the emissions center, right next to the emissions center building. And that was announced on Tuesday at the county commission meeting. Thank you.
Ma'am, could you state your name for the record?
Laureen Starkey. Yes, ma'am.
Thank
So
you.
Melinda or Mindy, I guess, if that does indeed become a shelter like the county has talked about, that's still, it's not defined as a community location, right? Or it wouldn't meet that definition.
It's still quite a ways away.
Yeah, first of all, I think it's quite a distance away.
Yeah,
It's on
okay.
the other side of the road.
So,
Right,
so
right.
even if it was defined
It's
as a
not-
community
it's not within
location,
the
I
distance.
don't think it would be in proximity enough where the state would deny that.
Yeah.
But,
300, or
500
Well,
feet?
300.
Is it 300 feet?
Oh,
it's right here, so
a
restaurants can't.
restaurant has 300,
Yeah.
other outlets 600.
Yep. So totally, as Commissioner Lott said, this is a totally separate concern issue. City has really no control over that either.
Yeah, okay.
When is this supposed to go into effect?
So if the conditional use permit is granted, I mean, it would be effective
Immediately.
immediately. They would have to go through the process with DABS, however, to get all
Yeah.
of their licensure. I'm not sure how long that takes.
After the remodel, we'll open back up in April.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other public comments? Seeing none, we'll close the public comment section. Discussion among the commissioners. I'll just say, for what we are able to do and what we have authority over, the boxes have been checked. This is an acceptable use, a conditional use under city code, and we have no reason to deny the application. And
Mr. Chair, I do have one, maybe just one quick question. I'm trying to find where those standards are. Okay. So under our standards in 1730-8, number 1 does talk about necessary or desirable service or facility which contributes to the well-being of the community without detrimental effects on health, safety, general welfare. And you know, a lot of times when conditional use permits are administrative items, so generally, you're not required by state code to have public hearings. But I have seen it enough throughout my career and have heard from others that, especially for conditional uses, it's sometimes valuable to get some comment from the public because you find out things that you didn't know about or didn't think about, and then you think, oh, well, and then maybe that leads to a condition. And the comment that I heard here tonight about the gate for the parking lot, you know, and the idea being that if people are staying there after hours to do whatever, but that wasn't happening when there was a gate, and if you can kind of associate that with saying, you know, with people, if once they've had a little bit to imbibe afterwards and then decide to hang around, but if the gate's locked, then they wouldn't be able to do that. I wonder if that would be an appropriate condition. I don't know. What do you think, Melinda, as a staff?
You've done more of this than I have. I think it would be a stretch.
Yeah.
We don't, you know, and I understand there is a difference, right, between an Applebee's and a Boondocks, but we don't require restaurants to gate their
No,
facilities
yeah,
off. And
I get
so,
that. I understand.
You know, I mean, let me just look at this and think out loud.
And if I could, I'd maybe like to ask the Boondocks folks, what would your feeling be about gating the lot, the parking
That
lot?
sure would show good faith to the neighbors, but it's not something we can require.
Independent research here. What has transpired, my understanding was that the gates originally were installed and put in place and were repeatedly hit by
Oh, I
cars
see. Okay.
and deteriorated. And I think the result was kind of coming to the conclusion that nobody else is required to do gates.
Yeah.
It became a maintenance problem, and that those gates were abandoned.
Yeah.
And I'm just finding this out, you know, through.
I just want to put out that lagoon gates their parking lot.
Yeah, that's true. They do.
We did put specifics on the requirement to have a large enough parking lot that they wouldn't park on the street, which apparently didn't happen with the particular building. and they complied with that, which is great.
Mhm.
Jennifer, could you go on to the
Sorry.
Thank
So when we talked about it, the neighborhood really wanted enough parking. They were worried about cars parking on the street and kids running across the street. So they complied with that. They put a big parking lot in.
Uh-huh.
It's a big, fun parking lot.
Yeah, no, I get that.
And that's why we don't see the problem at Pickler.
I've seen
There's not a
enough,
big enough parking lot for people to do donuts in.
I've seen enough teenagers, including my own when they were that age.
Yes.
Well, I'm never gonna, plead the fifth, but yeah.
The last time the problem happened, which was several months ago, our neighbor went over, and it was actually the employee.
Oh, is that right?
Yes. And our neighbor went all the way to, possibly you, I don't know who it was he went to report this. But it is patrons. People don't come out of Applebee's in a party atmosphere. They do.
Well,
here.
if they do,
turn
and
on the
they're
music in their cars.
generally not gonna hang
and they-
around in the park. I mean, those parking lots are not that big.
Big.
Either, so,
Right.
yeah.
It's the nature of the beast.
I know,
And-
I'm pretty sure one of the reasons that Lagoon, I mean, other than access to Lagoon, but I think one of the reasons they gate them is because they're such big parking lots. And they were being used for, yeah, and it's paid, of course. Yeah, that's right.
But this is a big parking lot, big enough that we see this all the time.
Yeah.
So it would help. It doesn't seem like it's that much to ask even to maintain 2 gates. It doesn't seem like that.
Is that what it would take to
Yeah,
gate their park?
there's two
There's two
entrances.
entrances?
And there are 2 metal gates that close. It just doesn't seem like that much to ask. When you're coming into our neighborhood and now supplying alcohol, it doesn't seem like that much to ask. We have invested everything in our homes. It's hard.
I don't know, I'm maybe gonna ask the rest of you, what you all think of that idea. I mean, I get it that, this may be a little bit of a stretch, but then again, conditions are sometimes based, and I mean, I think we have broad enough discretion under that item number 1, where we feel like it might be for the benefit and the safety, welfare of the community. But
I'm not sure if we could impose it. I would like to gently suggest it, but I also agree with the patron in the back of the room that kids do donuts in the church parking lot
Oh,
too.
yeah.
So kids are kids, and that's unfortunate, but they are. So I don't think that's something we can enforce. But we could gently suggest it, and
Mr. Chair, there's another comment.
Go ahead.
We do have a church just down the street on that same street. I live 500 steps from Boondocks. There, every Friday night, there is noise, screeching of tires coming out of the parking lot, coming down our street. If you drive down Desert Drive in the daytime, you'll see skid marks on the roads. And so, yeah, there's an opportunity to go do donuts in a church parking lot. But they're doing it every Friday night and Saturday night when they close. And it's dangerous because they're right next door to the north of that building, Boondocks, is gymnastics for children and a dance studio, and there is a daycare there also. And so it's a high traffic area now with Pickler and the other building, commercial buildings that are there. But directly west of Boondocks is a neighborhood. You don't have that at Applebee's or Wingers. Those buildings are in commercial areas that don't have neighborhoods. You have a neighborhood right across the street from Boondocks. And so we could have a policeman sit there every Friday night, and I guarantee he's going to give tickets to people. And that's before the alcohol is served. So, and my name is Brad Gibbs. I live.
Sorry, what was it?
Brad Gibbs.
Well, I was about to say that it's an interesting idea that I could possibly go for, but I would probably want to base it on more evidence than one public comment, but now we have 2. I still don't know that would be so. I'm just trying to think of how much evidence will court me to show that we were mitigating an impact to the
I
neighborhood.
just
And I
don't
don't
want to get in trouble
know.
legally. I don't know that that's within our bounds to do. So, and I don't want to get our hands slapped again
Yeah, well,
from,
I
you know.
think it was a good faith agreement in the very beginning that we met and worked out. So
Obviously, they agreed on it, the gates went in, and just because they had a maintenance problem. So, it's a business, you're making money, keep your gates.
you know, I have to say, I mean, so I was the planning director at Salt Lake City for 6 years. Plenty of restaurants there, even in neighborhoods. You have the 15th and 15th neighborhood, 9th and 9th, others, and those restaurants, many of them had alcohol licenses. Generally didn't see problems related to that. But then again, they didn't have big parking lots. They weren't like recreation areas, you know, they weren't where you have go-karts and all the other things that you do. So I don't know.
Another thought is, if we're mitigating the impacts of the alcohol license and it's kids doing donuts in the parking lot, then I'm not sure those two things are
Well,
related.
that's a
That
good
might
point.
not change anything.
Because they wouldn't have gotten the alcohol
Yeah.
from Boondocks. But then again, if they're getting it someplace else and if it's gated, then they wouldn't be able to get in there. But that's not directly related to the Boondocks license.
Well, and that
Yeah.
negative impact is currently ongoing. It's not,
Yeah,
and I mean,
Yeah, it's not related
it's
to
not connected, it
this.
can't be.
could be, but at the moment, it's not. And also, I'm looking at this, and we could always continue this to the next meeting, but I'm looking at this paragraph number 1. And honestly, it seems more like a purpose statement than any type of a
Yeah, it
standard.
really does.
I don't see a standard
I agree.
that comes through that.
I agree. It's a stretch.
Yes.
Yep.
So, I mean, I think the neighbors have made some great comments here tonight that's good for Boondocks to hear and understand.
Yeah.
And, you know, but I just don't know if that's something that legally or reasonably, as far as gates, that the city could extract out of these 12 standards. I don't see it, but I also am not legal counsel, and I would defer to legal counsel on that. And the only way really, I mean, I could go see if I could get Nick on the phone if we wanted to take a session, or we could bring it back after the conversation that I have with him. And I don't want to put anyone else on the commission on the spot, but I think we do have an attorney and the commission member, and they're expressing, I think, some of the same discomfort that I have. Generally speaking, our legal counsel and myself, thank goodness, are on the same page. But again, that would be Mr. Mills' call as our legal counsel, certainly not mine. And, you know, so if there is some hesitation, there's always the option to continue the item and bring it back at the next meeting.
Yeah.
You know, like I said, I don't see that, which, you know, unfortunately, there's a lot of issues with our zoning code, and this just points out another one, right? Like, this
Yeah.
isn't, what standard? We're saying provide a use at the particular location.
Yeah, there isn't really.
There's just not
It's
a
really broad. Yep.
Yeah.
You could drive a truck through it.
All right, we'll go ahead and take this last comment here. Thank you.
I am just wondering has Boondocks run like a target market analysis? Like, what market are they trying to sell here? Because originally it was families. That's what they came into our community for, is families, and that's how they sold it to us as neighbors. But now it seems like the target market is changing, and have they done an analysis to show that that market is changing? And it seems like when you bring the alcohol into it, you're targeting a much older population than what family brings in.
What was your name, ma'am?
Mary Bob.
Yeah, I don't, I mean, if the applicant wanted to respond to that, you could. You didn't, you know, we don't have to answer all of our questions here, so.
I guess in my experience, I don't think it changes the character, but it might in fact appeal to an older crowd. And when you do things like this, I don't know that we set this up and sold it to anybody to have a particular character or characteristic. I think what we do is try to conduct our business in a way so people will come and return and support us. And so I had similar concerns. What would the impact be? We just haven't seen that. And so we've been doing it at other locations for a longer period of time. And so that would be my response to the specific question about the demographic. And over time, I think businesses tend to develop and recognize the need for appealing to different demographics. Frankly, businesses that appeal only to children are not financially successful. So throughout the industry, I mean, there's just not, the people don't spend money on their children the same way they spend money on themselves. And so what we try to do is provide an environment where children and families and everybody feels safe to be there. And that you may have some concerns that maybe you don't feel safe in a place where they sell alcohol, but that hasn't tended to be our experience. I think we'll do it in a way. I know the concern was raised about a certain percentage, and the percentages of alcohol that we sell are way, way lower than that. I mean, I would say as far as food purchases, it's more like less than 10%, I would guess, of any food. There's not the activity of a bar. It's not, has no relation to a bar with respect to the ratio of alcohol to food. And so,
Thank you.
And, you know, I mean, in Utah, we're a little bit unique in that regard because I know certainly in other places outside of the state, you have facilities, places like this that, you know, appeal to families with go-karts and bowling and all the other stuff that they do. And they serve alcohol. It's just a matter of course. Most places do that. It's a little bit different in the state of Utah for, you know, some obvious reasons, some other reasons. But so from that standpoint, maybe it is a little bit different. But really, when you take it on the broader picture, it isn't really that different to do that. So I don't know. Yeah. I'm kind of inclined to, since Boondocks is saying, you know, they're not going to be opening this or really doing this, they're working on this and it's not going to be done till April. I'm kind of inclined to let it sit for a couple of weeks and let's see what happens. You know, if we
and I'm
have
not
staff
sure,
kind of.
and we can ask Brandon, because he's been working with the Department of Alcohol Services.
Yeah.
But I believe they need to have the conditional use permit to move forward.
Before you can move forward with the state? What's your timing with, I mean, how, does it take a long time to get the alcohol license from the state, or are you on a tight leash on a time frame?
Yes, we would like to have it finalized sooner than later, just because with the plans, if we're not able to get it, then there's no point in putting that into our construction.
Yeah, good point.
And with Thanksgiving, we'd be a month out before our next meeting.
Yeah, that's true.
Puts us a month away onto the 12th of December.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable moving forward tonight. I don't think we have enough evidence that there's a condition related to the alcohol that we need to mitigate.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't see a condition I feel like we need to add. I think some of these other issues are issues that need to be dealt with, but might be more in the public safety area. And if the public safety is not living up, then that's an issue, you know, that needs to be concerned, but in a different.
So Chair,
camp.
Melinda just stepped out to speak. So she just pulled up. Yeah.
Okay.
I do think you're both raising an important issue, though, is if there are already issues existing that are independent of the new conditional use permit, it's not necessarily our job to mitigate what's already existing. It's unfortunate,
Yeah, that's true.
but it's already existing.
It's already an
So
issue.
It wouldn't,
We can't link it
it wouldn't be
to
right
this.
to leverage that
Yeah.
into
Yeah.
enforcing it.
I-
Yeah.
I think we all realize that.
Yeah.
We're here to tell them.
So we'll just
We're hoping to have.
give her a minute.
Talk about our Thanksgiving plans in the meantime. We can all go around saying something we're grateful for. I don't know.
Well, I'm just wondering why we're not going to have a meeting on Thanksgiving.
Wilf, really? I am grateful for you guys, but heck no, I'm in St. George, so.
Do you think it would be okay to move forward with approving the minutes while we wait?
Oh, yeah, we could do that.
Chair?
I have no issue with that.
All right,
I
we're
don't know
moving.
the
We're going to
official
put this on
procedure.
hold for a moment and move to agenda item number 8 then.
Yeah, approval of minutes from October 24th.
So moved.
Second.
So moved.
That was easy.
All in favor?
That did not take enough time. We needed like a couple
Yeah,
more
well,
minutes.
We
Well,
want to talk, should we read them?
Please don't read them.
No.
It's hard enough listening to them the first time and then going back and doing it the second time.
Yeah.
Number 6.
I don't
But I
know.
think we need a second and a vote on it. so.
Yeah, I think
Second.
we got a second, yeah. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Was a second? Okay. Well,
Well, I
I
don't know,
don't
you
see
know,
or read these.
even if Nick were to say something
Yeah, I think it
in
would,
favor of it, I think we've already expressed, you all have expressed, I think we ought to just, we could move ahead if you all are so inclined.
yeah, I'm uncomfortable applying any condition, and I think it's a separate issue, the gating and or the public disturbances.
well, let me go tell her that really quick and see if that changes the conversation and then. So if anyone can tell some jokes and then.
Maybe we can,
Oh,
Of
yeah.
course.
I don't see the other gentleman here that spoke at first, and I apologize for, I didn't mean
slipped
for
out.
my voice to go up. I just was trying to just say, you know, we can only do what the ordinance says.
Yeah.
And that it's really the state that regulates how the alcohol aspects of it all works. Okay. Go for it.
Okay, I'll move to approve, oh, we need to do these separately though, right?
I believe we do, yeah, we'll do them separately here.
Number 6, the conditional use permit for the sale of beer at Boondocks Full Service Restaurant located at 525 South Deseret Drive, based on the findings of staff.
Second.
All right, we'll start the voting with myself. Aye.
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 Item number 7, conditional use permit for the sale of liquor at Boondocks, full-service restaurant. Do we need any more discussion? We kind of do the same thing.
Melinda, did we need to go through this one separately, or are we okay to, okay?
I think the discussion we've had is adequate if the planning commission feels
Yeah.
comfortable.
Yeah.
Well, then I'll move to approve the conditional use permit for the sale of liquor at the Boondocks Full Service Restaurant located at 525 South Deseret Drive, based on the findings of staff.
I'll second.
All right, we'll start the voting with Commissioner Lott.
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes. We already approved the minutes while you were gone.
Yeah.
That's how efficient we are.
Oh, I'm just wondering why we're not.
Because of Black Friday deals.
Yeah,
So
good point.
just a handful of things I wanted to let the commission know. Wasatch Front should have opened our RFP for the small area plan today.
Oh, good.
If not, I got back to them late last night with my thumbs up, so it may not be until tomorrow, but that is ready to roll at any moment as soon as Wasatch Front can open that up.
Great.
Very
We'll
good.
be inviting 9 firms to participate, so how Wasatch Front does their request for proposals is they have a pool of consultants that they've already vetted and are on the list of, I guess, just appropriate consultants. So there were 9 firms that over the last few months have reached out through me that we've met with, and so those 9 firms will be invited to submit a proposal. I think they were going to have that open for 2 weeks.
Okay.
So we'll probably get those in right around just shortly after Thanksgiving, and then we'll review those. And Wasatch Front actually will be doing the contract is with Wasatch Front, not the city, so we don't have to take it to council.
Okay. Do they do the selection, or do you do the selection? Or
Yeah,
is it a joint thing?
we'll do a joint selection. They have put standards in. As soon as Wasatch Front issues that RFP, I'm happy to send it out to the Planning Commission and the council. Obviously, given the nature of RFPs, we didn't want that out publicly before it was done through the proper channels.
I'd like to see it, though.
I think we came up with a good scope of work, and I'm excited about the next steps, which then brings me to another topic. We did present to the county on Tuesday morning at a work session, our community reinvestment area. It'll be on the agenda for approval, hopefully on Tuesday.
You think it'll get approved?
I hope so. So Commissioner Stevenson had one concern that he brought up, and so we have changed the draft of the interlocal agreement essentially to say if we are issued any third quarter transportation funds, that they would reduce the allowed cap by that amount. So if we were able to receive $2.5 million to do the pedestrian enhancements and whatever the beautification we wanted to do on Main Street here, then instead of a cap being at 10 million, that would just drop to 7.5.
Okay.
So I think the one concern or couple concerns that were brought up by the commissioners who are present, I think have been addressed through that ILA. So I am hopeful that we'll move forward on Tuesday and that it will be approved. Yes, we will not have a meeting on Thanksgiving. Wilf, you can come if you want.
No.
The building will probably be locked though, so our next meeting then would be December 12th. We also have had, I think, 6 interviews so far for a planning commissioner alternate. We have 3 more, I think, next week, and then we'll get that commissioner selected.
It's great to hear that we have that much interest.
And all of the applicants really bring their own unique perspective. And one of the things that we do try is to get a kind of a diverse representation on the planning commission, whether that's areas of the city, kind of place in life. And so I think we've had a really kind of great representation of our community in those applicants.
That's great.
It'll be hard to make the
I've been in
decision.
situations where we were begging for people.
Yeah, and we've had that too.
Yeah.
So it's nice to be on the other end of that. Yeah. Let's see. So for those who did receive their conditional use permit approvals tonight, we'll be sending out letters giving you the notice of those approvals. And then last but not least, Kaysville Gives. We're starting, and I should actually let Mindy talk about that, but we love when our local businesses support Kaysville Gives. Hint, hint. I'll let Mindy talk about Kaysville Gives, but it's a fantastic program. One of the things that we've pivoted and done this year is try to get more of our city employees involved, and so data entry, shopping for tags that aren't selected, and so we're really trying to get our staff involved as well as the community. So, but we'll let the Kaysville Gives queens speak to that.
My free plug here. So those of you that don't know what Kaysville Gives is, it started 8 years ago. And we started out serving 10 local families, which at the time there was 3 of us on the committee, and it seemed like a massive undertaking. Last year, with the help of Young Truck and Trailer and our residents, businesses, city staff. We were able to help over 140 families here in Kaysville. My favorite part about it is that we get to, we reach out to our elementary schools and speak to the counselors who are over the needs in their schools, and we've been able to get those families that are directly impacted here in our community. So it starts basically next week. Tags, everything is on kaysvillegives.com. You can donate financially, you can pick tags. A lot of people want to come and help and sort and organize everything. The hard part is if I don't have gifts or things for people to organize, it's really hard to bring people in to organize. So any rallying of troops that you guys know or communities, then I would love to have your support. The Fill the Fire Truck event is December 7th, and it's so great. I love that this affects all of our community, but our city council, our youth city council are involved. The fire department helps us put on this event, and you can come drop off gifts, donations, all things are new. And the hope is to be able to bring Christmas to those that are needing just a little extra love. And I think especially at this time where, you know, we're talking about what we can do as a community to be a good community, this is a great way for our community to show that we are awesome and that we do care about the needs of everyone around us. And it just comes out in opportunities like this. So I'm so glad I get to be part of it every year. So kaysvillegives.com, you all got that. And if you're looking for ways to serve and to help, you know, feel free to reach out to me. Okay, there you go.
Excellent. All right. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
We are adjourned. Thank you.
Oh, is this new?
My first